Hello YouTube, how's everyone doing? It's Professional here. Welcome back to my playthrough of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. We're going to continue from where we left off here, and what we're going to do is we're going to resume Professor Hairbrayne's trial. I think this might be the end of the trial here. We're going to see how this ends or where this goes, because I got a feeling there's some really big surprises in for us here. Let's do this. The Return of the Great Departed Soul, Trial Part 3. October, 11:53 a.m., the Old Bailey. Defendant's Antechamber. Ah, the Knight Errant himself. Oh, have you been watching from the gallery, Mr. Sholmes? I've been on the edge of my seat the entire time. Courtroom trials are fascinating affairs, as a spectator at least. I'm glad you've been enjoying yourself. I have to ask. What on earth is going on? It makes no sense. What's this professor business all about? He doesn't look like any professor I've ever met before. Whoever even is he? Ah, of course. You were in Germany already 10 years ago. Yes, the professor. When I discovered he was the one who had been abducted, a sense of foreboding stirred within me. But who knew the monster would come knocking at your door? My heartfelt sympathies. As it turns out, Lord Van Zieks is even more intimately tied to this case than any of us realize, isn't he? Yes, how true. His great friend from university in the dock. And now, a waxwork of the killer who took his esteemed brother's life makes an appearance too. I imagine even the shrewd Mr. Reaper failed to foresee that kick in the teeth. An extraordinary move on your part, my dear fellow, to throw that in front of the man. You make it sound deliberate. I can't help feeling that this professor case is really very puzzling. Oh yes? In what particular manner? Well, there's Mr. Drebber, Dr. Sif, and Lord Van Zieks. It seems that everybody in the trial has a link to the case somehow. Yeah, and that's what's getting crazy about it now. Now we're gonna bring in the coroner because she's apparently an accomplice. Yes. In fact, I alone am not a member of the set. Though that leaves me as an empty set, all alone with no intersection to any other. Excuse me. Who's this? Oh no, her. The Dr. Sif. Ah, Dr. Courtney Sif. Niece Stevens, good day to you. I really don't trust her. Hello, Sholmes, that was very shrewd of you. What in particular, pray? You requested that 10-year-old autopsy report from Gregson, didn't you? Why would you assume such a thing? Because Gregson told me. To think it's been 10 years. 10 years in the laboratory, wielding my scalpel. I smell of nothing but corpses and disinfectant. A policeman on the jury had a lot to say about you as it happens, Miss Dr. Sif. And I've accused you of being complicit in what happened. I'm hoping that you'll take the stand and tell the truth about what really happened. That certainly won't be possible. What does she mean? Lord Van Zieks won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it. Lord Strongheart? The Pandora's box you were warned about is the professor's case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me. What does she mean by the Pandora's box in the professor's case, but attempting to hide from the truth? That's cowardice. I've always fought crime in the way that I see fit. I have no regrets, none at all. And that's all I came here to say. So, good day to you. So, is Lord Strongheart in on this conspiracy too? This is getting ridiculous now. The whole government is in on this. She mentioned it too. This Pandora's box. Now, what Pandora's box, that was a story, I'm trying to remember exactly, let me Google this really quickly, but I'm trying to remember what, god was involved with Pandora's box, Okay. Oh yeah, okay, so Pandora's box, Okay, so Pandora's box was, ancient Greek mythology. I was right, before. And basically what it was one of the gods, it doesn't say here which god yet, I'd have to read more into it, but basically one of the gods gave this girl Pandora a box, the story goes, and told her, whatever you do, do not open up that box, but you have to hold on to it. And so she held on to the box, but curiosity got the best of her, and she decided to open up the box. And basically what was in the box was all the really bad things. Sins, diseases, wars, lies, conspiracies, all really bad things that you can possibly think of were in that box. And so basically, the coroner is basically saying that with this case, when you're bringing up the professor, the serial killer from 10 years ago, you're trying to open up Pandora's box. That apparently something really bad happened, something's been hidden. That it's almost like the case is like the box. That it's been hidden, and people don't want, the government doesn't want anyone to open up that box. That apparently there's something really bad in the truth of it. But we're gonna find out exactly what this means. Whatever does it all mean, there's really no cause for concern, I assure you. When the trial resumes, the meaning will become all too apparent, whether you'd like it or not. Huh? So Mr. Sholmes knows something about this too? Now then, I believe it's almost time. I must make my way back to the public gallery. The edge of my seat awaits. I think maybe you're enjoying yourself a little too much. Yeah. Ah yes, the one word of warning before I go. If in the course of the trial this afternoon, you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To the bitter end, you understand. Do not falter, whatever may come to pass. Alright, I understand. Thank you. Good, I shall make myself scarce then. I purchased a bar of caramel earlier, so I shall be gnawing on it as you gnaw away at the truth. What did that warning from Mr. Sholmes really mean, I wonder? Especially the bit about whatever may come to pass. It's time for the final chapter, then. I'm determined to find the truth. No matter what. Let's find out what's going on here, then. 24th October, 12:40 p.m. The Old Bailey, courtroom. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby reconvene the proceedings of this court. Counsels for the defense and prosecution, are you ready to be able to continue? The prosecution is ready, my lord. Yes, my lord. The defense is also ready. As the court is aware, the case under our scrutiny began with a damaging incident at the Great Exhibition. Yet we now find ourselves embroiled in the details of a convicted felon who was sent to the gallows a decade ago. This trial has certainly defied all expectation, as it seems to be the fate of all trials in which this Nipponese is involved, my lord. So then, let us begin our exploration of the defense's assertion that the waxwork was cardinally involved in this matter. Lord Van Zieks. My lord? Are we still awaiting the arrival of Madame Tusspells? Not at all. She is in the antechamber as we speak, and ready to be summoned. Very well. Bring in the witness. At once, my lord. Bailiff, show Madame Tusspells to the stand. Things are about to become a lot more intense. Yeah, when that music plays, the scary music, some bad thing is about to happen. If Drebber is responsible, as I'm sure he is, it means he must have had an accomplice in Dr. Sif. And what connects the pair of them is the waxwork. Yes, the model of the professor. That's the key to the link between these otherwise unrelated individuals. What does it all mean? That's the serial killer's waxwork figure there. It's a tenuous link, admittedly, but at present, it's all we have to go on. So she's making a waxwork in court. State your name and occupation for the court, please. My name is Madame Emeralda Tusspells. I'm a waxwork artisan. and the proprietress of Madame Tusspells' Museum of Waxwork. You will have to pardon me for working as I testify. My new exhibit must open very soon. You can't do that while you're testifying. You have to have all your attention to the court. Oh, so he finally gets a statue, does he? Now there are 2 of them in the world. Oh my, what expression is she carving onto that face? A number of days ago, a particular waxwork model was stolen from your museum. Can you confirm this? Wait, is she making a Mr. Sholmes figure? Oh no. Oui, that is true. That means yes in French. At first, we believed it had been kidnapped. We can't really kidnap a wax figure. A waxwork model? Kidnapped. Yes, my lord. There was a demand for ransom money left behind by the culprit. However, according to what I have just been told outside the courtroom, that was not the true reason. I understand it was utilized as a substitute for the body of a murder victim. At present, that is no more than conjecture proposed by the defense. This is the victim of the case in question, Mr. Odiasman. But of course, I know him well. He is part of my odious personage exhibit. I detest to say what is evident, but Mr. Asman does not resemble the professor at all. Yes, but perhaps their faces are very similar. Are you suggesting that we should see now the demasked visage of the professor? Yeah. I have here the key, but it is strictly forbidden to open the lock. By who? That is absurd. This is absurd. Pardon? I don't know what face you've carved onto your fancy figure beneath that mask. But clearly, it won't be that of the actual killer. I want to see what the serial killer's face. Who is the serial killer? Because that man's identity was never made public after all. So we don't know who the serial killer from 10 years ago killed Barrick's brother. He was apparently hanged. But now, I think the serial killer might technically still be alive because Drebber apparently claims that he saw him escape from the grave. But then when people examined the grave, they said the body was there. I'm curious whether Drebber replaced the body with another body. And the serial killer could be alive because the coroner was the one who wrote up the final report on it. Now, who is the serial killer? I think the serial killer could either be Barrick's brother or Asman. I think one of the two. And that waxwork is a waxwork of the serial killer. And apparently, when it was put in the museum, it also had to have that helmet on it, so that you don't know who the killer was. But apparently, the waxwork is a real sculpture of the actual killer's face. So I'm really curious on that. The trial took place in a closed court. The proceedings were strictly confidential. The condemned man was summarily executed. His identity remains a closely guarded national secret. Why? Why is that a national secret who the serial killer was? There is no possible way that a repository of tawdry exhibits could get its hands on that information. Well, what I'll say here is that the reason that the government is hiding the serial killer's identity, my theory is he has to be somebody important. That's why they're hiding the serial killer's identity. Quel dommage. I don't know what that means. It would seem you are unaware of the Tusspells principles. What's that? What principles? Oh great, we get the creepy music. This is Madame Tusspells' theme here. The family Tusspells has always prided itself on sculpting its models à la perfection. Every detail, including the visage, is fashioned with complete fidelity. Et voilà our principles. If anyone speaks French, could you tell me what she's saying in the comments? There is a well-known legend about the Tusspells waxworks from the time of the French Revolution. A member of the Tusspells family is said to have made a waxwork of the queen who was executed. That is, Marie Antoinette, who was executed during the French Revolution. Oui, that is true. It was a century ago now. Oh, so if it's a century ago, you know, this is somewhere in the... This would be in the 1890s now, or close to it. I believe the queen's face was carved in the minutes of following her death, actually at the guillotine site. You are correct. The model is on display still today in the House of Horrors. We Tusspells will stop at nothing to obtain a faithful replica of our subjects. Dear me, a somewhat disturbing tenacity of purpose. It is the only way to obtain a truly lifelike representation of the subject. And it has been my family's secret for generations. Do you mean to say that beneath that mask... Oui, the true visage of the killer is there. This is ludicrous. It's out of the question. The professor spread terror throughout Great Britain. As a result, the Madame Tusspells special exhibit remains extremely popular even today. So people that are watching, don't get confused. Professor Hairbrayne is our client, who we're defending. The professor is a different person. That's a serial killer from 10 years ago. The killer emerging from his own grave. It is a sight to behold. You should, come. Open up the mask. I want to see the face. I think, madam, it would be beneficial to hear your formal testimony on this matter. You will explain every detail of this macabre model and your personal involvement in its creation. I wonder how she got the killer's face. If the killer's identity was never revealed to the public, how did she make a sculpture of his face? With pleasure. The Professor of Waxwork. The special exhibit in the House of Horrors is based on a rumor that shocked society in London. An impression of the visage was taken directly from the corpse, in accordance with Tusspells' family principles. Or visage, I think I'm pronouncing it wrong. I enlisted the aid of the gravedigger, and created a mold for the head in the cemetery just before the interment. The aid of the gravedigger, is she talking about Drebber? Was Drebber the one who dug him up? Because Drebber had a shovel, Drebber did have a shovel, there. Oh no, I hid myself until he gave me a signal. I was there for a very long time that night. As dawn approached, I was very worried that I could be discovered. So you dug up a grave to make a perfect... The gravedigger, the man sanctioned this? Oui, I will do all that is necessary to achieve the true resemblance my family is celebrated for. Nobody else knew, only the gravedigger. What harm did it do, The gravedigger, who are you talking about? So you truly saw it. The face of that monster. Naturally, I was aware at the time that his identity was a secret. But Tusspells would not be Tusspells if we did not insist on absolute fidelity to our sculptures. This is getting really creepy. I don't believe this. I myself have seen the special exhibit at your museum, madam. A truly blood-curdling scene, in which the murderer is emerging from his own grave. The scene it depicts was the subject of many rumors in London 10 years ago. I have here a newspaper from the time. Drebber was the one who was at the cemetery 10 years ago, and he had a shovel with him, and he claimed he saw the killer rise from the grave. But then when the police arrived, they said the killer was definitely in the grave. The special exhibit was based upon the picture in the article. It was the most detailed account of what had happened, as reported by the eyewitness who saw it. 10-year-old article, a newspaper article recounting the tale of an eyewitness to the alleged resurrection of the professor from his grave on the night of his execution. Man rises from the grave. It's too absurd for words. The public enjoys absurdity, monsieur. That is why I have reproduced the scene as carefully as possible in my museum. And it's a waxwork from that exhibit that was stolen some days before the incident at the Great Exhibition, wasn't it? That is correct. The professor you see before you here. Most puzzling. Counsel for the defense. Proceed with the cross-examination. This waxwork links Drebber to Dr. Sif, and there has to be some reason for that, which hasn't yet come to light. But I'll find it. I'll get to the bottom of what really happened. I'll prove that Dr. Sif and Drebber were in on this crime together. The special exhibit in the House of Horrors is based on a rumor that shocked society in London. Hold it! And that rumor would be? A 10-year-old tale now, but one that no Londoner would ever forget. Ah, right, I know just what you're talking about, I think. Of course, it couldn't be anything else. Yes, that story will never disappear. The tale of the condemned killer rising from the dead. That is the central attraction of my house of horrors. The rumor was whispered all over the city, and it was like this. It was in Lowgate Cemetery behind the prison, in the dead of night after the execution of the killer. The interned professor slid back the stone slab, covering his tomb, and emerged from his grave. A young man who witnessed this felt a scream welling up inside him. But an instant later, he heard an ear-splitting gunshot from over his shoulder. Gunshot? That's new information. The bullet struck the emerging corpse, and he fell motionless once more. The scream finally found its way from the mouth of the young witness, who turned and ran for his life. That was Drebber. The corpse climbed out of his own grave. And then somebody shot him? Who was it? Nobody knows, even today. But remember, it was just a rumor. Perhaps nothing more than a ghost story. No, there's some truth to it. It's not entirely true. The good people of London, they love stories like this. That is why it was in every newspaper across the capital. But was it just a story? I mean, this is exactly the scene that can be seen today at your museum, isn't it? That special exhibit was modeled on that very illustration. For a while afterwards, the contents of that article were reproduced in every newspaper imaginable. Madam, might I say something? Please go ahead, Madame Monsieur. When something is described as a rumor, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's entirely made up. I believe that often, rumors contain elements of the truth. Sometimes a rumor could be completely false. Sometimes it could be completely true, or sometimes it could have, like, you know, parts of it could be true and parts of it could be fake. I see that people from the East can be just as astute as the people of Europe. Can we be sure, for instance, that the professor's execution was successful? It is not possible for the dead to come back to life. Sorry? 10 years ago, I was there in Lowgate Cemetery, after the criminal known as the Professor was killed by hanging. I took a wax impression of his visage from the corpse just before it was interned. So I can assure you, the man was dead. I see. It would certainly appear that the condemned man suffered the intended fate. Okay, let me look at this newspaper. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night at Lowgate Cemetery just behind the prison on the night of that foul demon's execution. The newly interned professor forced off his grave cover as he clawed free of the earth. The young man who witnessed the scene was on the verge of raising a shriek when in the next second, a gunshot rang out suddenly from behind. The bullet pierced the resurrected man's chest, whose breath then stilled once more. The youth then finally released the scream he had been holding and ran for his life. The university student who expressed this shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the University of London and a resident of its student dorms. Mad sheep rampage? Locals reported a most remarkable circumstance in which folded sheep were seized with a sudden fright and leapt from... Okay. Charles Darwin to receive Copley Medal. This year's recipient of the Royal Society's most prestigious award is Mr. Charles Darwin for his highly important contributions to researchers in the field of geology, zoology, and botanical physiology. Mr. Darwin joins the ranks of such monumental figures. Okay. That was... Charles Darwin was in this time period, also. Hold it! Let's press this. Is it that true of every waxwork in the museum, then? It is, assuming the subject is dead, of course. Live subjects have to cooperate in a similar way. I have letters from imprisoned criminals all the time, you know. What sort of letters? When my time comes, please make a waxwork of me. Comme ça? No. My museum is famous, monsieur. To be made into a waxwork is an honor, and for some criminals a symbol of status even. Because nothing says hardened criminal better than wax. And it is thanks to one killer in particular that my museum has gained such popularity in London. I refer to the star of the special exhibit, of course, the Professor, whose form you claim to have captured by taking an impression from the actual corpse. There are no exceptions to the principle of the Tusspells. I enlisted the aid of the gravedigger and created a mold for the head in the cemetery just before the interment.
Hold it!
Surely that's illegal, isn't it? Yep. It would seem the proprietress of this repository of novelties was blinded by monetary greed. It had nothing to do with money. The man is part of London's criminal history. That is why I had to sculpt him, to record this history. It is the raison d'etre of the Tusspells Museum. But if the man was convicted in a closed court and sent for immediate execution, then surely nobody but the members of the judiciary present know the killer's true identity. I assure you, behind that mask is hidden the true face of the Professor. You realize what you're saying. The Professor's identity is a national secret. I understand. And now that the truth about the special exhibit has been revealed, it must perhaps close. Of course it will, as will your entire museum if you don't tread very carefully, madam. Oh, he's pissed. That could be another interesting chapter in the history of my family, I think, don't you? So 10 years ago, on the night of the Professor's execution, you took a wax impression of his face from the corpse. Oui, exactement. I hid myself until he gave me a signal. I was there for a very long time that night.
Hold it!
You were there longer than you expected to be. I had some difficulties in capturing the subject's form correctly. As I removed the mask, the mouth of the cadaver fell open, and I had some problems with the chin. Dare I ask? The man had been dead for a short while already, you see. His muscles were relaxing, and consequently, his chin would not align itself correctly. Oh dear, what a horrible thought. Under normal circumstances, I would have an assistant with me. However, that night I was alone, and as a consequence, I missed my preferred window of time. What do you mean? When I take the impression of the visage of a cadaver, I always wait until 3 hours after death. Why 3 hours? Is that amount of time significant? It is because of rigor mortis. Rigor mortis. It's the name given to the phenomenon that occurs in recently deceased bodies. As a rule, 3 hours post-death, the muscles in the body begin to stiffen. Yup, that's true. But by approximately 10 hours post-death, the entire body is completely rigid and inflexible. And then from that point on, the muscles slowly start to revert to their relaxed state. The effect is often used to estimate the time of death when a body is discovered. That is true. This is all true. The Ace Attorney got this right. Well, that was an education, if a slightly scary one. As Madame Mosiel says, rigor mortis commences 3 hours after death, and it starts in the jaw. I see. So that's why you wait. Before that time, the mouth falls open, and it is very difficult to do my work. It's getting hard for me to do my work with all this talk of corpses. I wonder about that information the courts just heard from Madame Tusspells. About rigor mortis. Let's just say it's significant. The information about rigor mortis that you shared with us, would you mind including it in your formal testimony? I believe it could be significant, you see. Of course, I do not mind at all. I can't help feeling that after this latest topic, the atmosphere in the courtroom has become extremely grave. Yeah, no time for jokes. This is no time— oh my god! Oh my god, he literally just said what I was thinking. Oh my god. Oh my god, how many times have I predicted what the characters are gonna say? Madam, kindly amend your testimony as discussed. Bien sûr. It's kind of creepy how she's like the friendliest and nicest witness so far, and yet she digs up bodies. That's what's creepy about her. It took me a very long time because it was before the onset of rigor mortis.
Hold it!
Let's press this. Rigor mortis being the phenomenon you described, whereby the corpse becomes stiff after death. I think you said that it starts at the jaw about 3 hours post-death. Is that right? Oui, c'est ça. Of course, the exact duration depends a little on the season. I didn't realize a waxwork artisan would be so well versed in the subject. None. That is only elementary knowledge in the field of legal medicine. Well, I had no idea about it, but maybe I won't admit to my ignorance about the forensic science. I could ask my father to give you a very simple primer if you like. I think corpses should be your domain. I'm not good with them. Oh dear. I'll do my very best. As dawn approached, I was very worried that I could be discovered.
Hold it!
You say that dawn was approaching. What was the time of day then, approximately? Well, I could not say. But when I left the cemetery with my utensils and wax, the morning light was becoming visible. The execution took place on 17th of June, which had the earliest sunrise of that year. Indeed it did. First light would have been at around 4:40 in the morning. That really is early. The fact is, I had very little time, so I finished my work in half an hour. It was necessary to complete the impression and bury the body before daybreak, of course. If somebody had discovered me there, it would have been a catastrophe, so I had to hurry. Is it me, or does Mr. Sholmes seem to be taking shape more quickly now, too? You certainly appear to go to extraordinary lengths for your work, madam. I wonder, is what she just said particularly significant? I'm gonna say significant, too. Madam, those details about how long it took you to complete the sculpture and the early sunrise, could you include them in your testimony? I believe they may be significant. Of course, if you would like me to. You're quite right, Mr. Naruhodo. It is intriguing. A sunrise at 4 in the morning would be absolutely unimaginable at home, wouldn't it? That's not quite what I meant by significant. Kindly amend your formal testimony then, madam. With pleasure, my lord. I hurried to finish my work in the half hour before sunrise. Then I left as soon as the corpse was interned.
Hold it!
Did you have a reason to believe you might be discovered once the sun came up or something? I had paid the gravedigger money to keep my little secret, of course. But with the morning light, I knew that the warden from the prison would commence his patrol of the area. Couldn't you just paid off the warden too then? I had already paid the gravedigger, as I said. You cannot buy the silence of everyone, or the secret is no longer a secret, The sunrise was at 4:40 a.m. that day, which means that it would have been around 4 when you began your sculpting work. Oui, that must be correct. That would be when this gravedigger gave me the signal to come out of hiding. So, that's all I have to go on. What's your feeling, Mr. Naruhodo? For some reason, Dr. Sif went along with Drebber's plan. Now, if that's really true, then the professor is the only other thing we know of that links the pair of them. So I feel sure that waxwork must be a clue to this mixed mystery somehow. In that case, we must use this cross-examination to uncover exactly what it means. Otherwise, the jurors are sure to revert their leanings, and the trial will be over. I agree. But interestingly, uncovering what the professor has to do with all of this means more to Lord Van Zieks than anyone. That's the impression I'm getting anyway. Yes, as do I. After all, he has a profound connection to the professor as well. night of the Foul Demon's execution, the newly interned professor... Confirmed at midnight, 17th of June.
Hold it!
Rigor mortis being the phenomenon you described whereby the corpse becomes stiff after death. This is important. I think you said that it starts at the jaw, about 3 hours post-death. Is that right? Oui, c'est ça. Of course, the exact duration depends a little on the season. I didn't realize a waxwork artisan would be so well versed in the subject. Okay, I think this is important. She said that rigor mortis takes, it takes 3 hours to set in. But the man was hanged on midnight, and she arrived at 4 a.m. So she was there 4 hours after he was dead. That makes no sense. It was before the onset of rigor mortis. She was there at around 4 a.m. The killer was hanged at 12. Rigor mortis hadn't kicked in yet. Something's wrong with the original autopsy report. I think this is it.
Objection!
Yeah, it looks like I'm right. Madam Tusspells. I have here an autopsy report that was filed 10 years ago now. It confirms the death of the professor following his execution at the gallows. And, is that a problem? I believe it is, because your testimony and a particular detail in the report completely contradict one another. We? Are you going to explain yourself, my Nipponese friend? Yes, we are. According to her testimony, Madame Tusspells was creating her wax impression just before dawn. And at that time, rigor mortis had not yet set in. Yeah, because it takes 3 hours. And he was hanged at midnight. And so she was there at 4 a.m., 4 hours later, and rigor mortis still hadn't kicked in. Something's wrong with the coroner's report. Am I correct so far, madam? I don't think she's lying. She's not the one who's lying. Dr. Sif is, the coroner. You are, yes. As I said, the stiffening of the jaw is the first sign of rigor mortis, 2 to 3 hours after death. But the man's chin was limp, so he cannot have been dead for a long time. But on the other hand, if you look at Dr. Sif's report, it quite clearly states the following. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th of June. No. If the professor indeed died at midnight that day, then by the time you were sculpting his face, rigor mortis would already have set in. Yep, we were right. Yes, you are right. The chin, it would have been completely stiff. In other words, this report is wrong.
Objection!
Now, Zieks is gonna, Zieks is probably gonna accuse Madame Tusspells of lying. No coroner makes mistakes when recording the time of death. That the very idea is absurd. Well, she did. In that case, there's only one possible conclusion. She lied. The execution didn't actually take place at the stated time. Impossible. Order. Counsel, this is beyond folly. Not only do you indict the author of the report, Dr. Sif, but you also implicate members of the staff at Barclay Prison where the execution took place. By heck. Extraordinary. Not in my day. My learned friend appears to have overlooked one very crucial fact. What fact? The professor died that night, without question. He did, of course he did. I moved the man's limp jaw with my own hands. There was no... Yes, the professor died that night, but we don't know the time and where he died. But what if he didn't die at the gallows? Exactly. Didn't die at... Are you insane? What? What exactly are you suggesting did happen in that case? It's almost impossible to believe, but it would explain the link between Dr. Sif, the professor, and that one other person of interest. I have evidence that will explain exactly what I'm suggesting happened that night. Counsel, present the evidence at once. The evidence that allegedly explains what really happened on the night of the professor's execution. His body might have been moved. Let's try the newspaper here.
Take that!
What happened that night is written very plainly in this newspaper article. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night at local cemetery. You're suggesting it was a corpse coming back from the dead now? Well, if this article is to be believed, yes. The professor, assumed dead following his execution, emerged from his grave and was killed again.
Objection!
Don't be a fool. That's simply a rumor, published by the gutter press. So he's talking about the gunshot, because when he came out of the grave, apparently the rumor goes that he was shot again. Can you be certain of that? Are you serious? The point is, as the article says, there was a witness to what happened. My word. Yes, indeed. Masui, the young man who stole into the cemetery by chance that night.
Objection!
And that man is here, Drebber, in the court. Of course there was a witness. The story didn't write itself, but obviously, the man made it all up. And in any case, this was 10 years ago now. There would surely be no hope of finding him. He's right here in the court! It's Drebber!
Objection!
On the contrary, my lord, we all know this witness well. What? Are you suggesting, counsel, that you've identified the person in question? That you know who claims to have seen these utterly incredible events take place? Yes, my lord. In fact, you could say that he's right here before my very eyes. You will substantiate your latest claims now then, counsel. Who is the alleged witness of this staggering scene from the cemetery 10 years ago? It's Drebber. Enoch Drebber, here we go.
Take that!
The man in question is Mr. Enoch Drebber. Drebber? The previous witness? The special exhibit in the House of Horrors at Madame Tusspells' Museum of Waxwork recreates that decade-old scene in great detail. The condemned criminal emerging from the grave, and besides the tomb, a young man with a lantern stumbling upon the terrifying sight. And that young man is a 10-year younger Mr. Enoch Drebber. I think it's time for Mr. Drebber to testify again. Order, order, order. Surely not, counsel. Drebber was there in Lowgate Cemetery? What is all this talk about Mr. Drebber? Is the name significant? Of course, Madame Tusspells doesn't know, does she? Yes, it's extremely significant, madam, to your situation as well, in fact. What situation? The theft of the Professor waxwork from your museum some days ago was perpetrated by the very same man. None. But that would mean... Madame Tusspells. It would appear you know the name, Enoch Drebber. Yes, I know it. But from long ago in the past. What? Oh my. Good gracious. Explain yourself. Tell us everything you know. Yes, of course. The story of the young man and the terrible sight he witnessed in the cemetery 10 years ago was published in every single newspaper in London and throughout Great Britain. However, in all of the articles, The witness was simply described as a certain young man. No details were published about his identity. His name was never revealed. That is, apart from in one newspaper. The Daily Circus. It is the paper from which comes the article I have already shown the court. You're saying that his full name was only published in that article? Goodness me, yes. Here it is. The university student who experienced this shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the University of London, and a resident of its student dorms. Unbelievable. When I read the article, I went to meet with the man. His discovery of the condemned criminal coming back to life in the cemetery in the dead of night would make a perfect exhibit for my house of horrors, whether it was the truth or not. I see. So you went to meet Mr. Drebber in order to sculpt the waxwork of the man, did you? Exactamente. He was studying science at the University of London in those days. He was just a poor student. I paid him £5 to model for the waxwork. And since that time, it has been in my museum to recreate the scene of terror from the cemetery. So, 10 years ago, a young man appealed to the public about an extraordinary event he witnessed. A criminal who had been put to death, re-emerging from his grave in the middle of the night. But the public treated his claim as nothing more than an amusing anecdote that was soon forgotten. 10 years later, the same man steals a waxwork model of the executed criminal, ostensibly to use as a body double for the victims in the case we're discussing here today. Even though the waxwork's build is a poor match for the victim, and its face is obscured by a mask. So the question is, why would the man do such a thing? That is the question. Which brings us to the 3 days ago when the birdcage crashed in the Crystal Tower. If the birdcage had in fact contained not the body of Mr. Asmat, but that same waxwork, the coroner from Scotland Yard who investigated Dr. Sif would have noticed immediately. And yet, she submitted this autopsy report for the victim, which the court has seen earlier. Why? Because the waxwork was that of the professor. Is that what you're saying? Dr. Sif put her name to a document confirming the death of a condemned criminal who was still alive. A criminal whose apparent resurrection was witnessed by Mr. Drebber. But that misconduct was a deadly secret the coroner would do anything to protect. Which is precisely why Mr. Drebber used that particular waxwork as the body double. Because he wanted the coroner to find the waxwork. But how did Drebber know that the coroner covered up the death? My lord, this court must summon Dr. Sif to the stand. The defense is determined to find out exactly how the coroner and Mr. Drebber are connected. But according to the massive missive I received this morning through the prosecutor's office, Dr. Sif is unable to participate in these proceedings. Is that not the case? You know, screw the proceedings. We want to get to the truth here. You know, the government can't give an order and just say this person can't testify. No, you bring this person in to testify right now. This person has something to do with the case. She told us so herself, didn't she? Lord Van Zieks won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it. Lord Strongheart. The Pandora's box you were warned about is the Professor case, but please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me. Something happened on the night of the killer's execution 10 years ago, but what was it? And surely nobody would want to get to the bottom of that more than Lord Van Zieks. The prosecution calls for the instructions in that missive to be scrapped. Because remember, the professor killed Barrick's brother, the serial killer, but Lord Van Zieks, this missive was issued from the Lord Chief Justice's office. The assigned prosecutor has the final say on policy in any particular trial. You know, this is what I like about Lord Van Zieks. He doesn't take nonsense. So when he finds out that somebody's lying, or he wants to get to the bottom of things, he'll get to the bottom of things, even though he can be ignorant at times. In other words, me. Yes. Let Enoch Drebber and Dr. Sif both take the stand together. Order, order, order. Very well, I will uphold your request. Bailiff, send a subpoena with immediate effect addressed to Dr. Sif of the Forensic Investigation Team. The woman is compelled to attend on Her Majesty's orders. Good job, Judge. Alright then, Enoch Drebber and Dr. Sif. If they weren't colluding with one another, this crime could never have been committed. I'm just a stone's throw away. I can feel it. The truth behind all of this is about to come out. Thank you for your attendance at such short notice, Dr. Sif. I'm disappointed in you, Lord Van Zieks. You've completely betrayed the agreed policy of both Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office. Betrayal is not in my nature, as long as the truth isn't compromised. Good job there, Zieks. If it is, if there's even a hint of wrongdoing, then no matter whom it concerns or disgruntles, I will pursue the matter to the bitter end, as would any prosecutor worth his salt. Mr. Drebber, you took the victim's life by means of a machine that you constructed in your workshop. And Dr. Sif, as the investigating coroner, you were the first on the scene to examine the victim's body. It is the belief of the defense that you collaborated with each other and were both complicit in this crime. And where's your evidence? At present, we have no definitive evidence, but we do have a very significant clue. What are you talking about? I'm talking about, of course, about the waxwork. This model of the killer known as the Professor, who was sentenced to death 10 years ago. You don't need to tell me. I witnessed the man's execution with my own eyes, and officially pronounced him dead. That remains to be seen. Is that so? According to newspaper reports from the time, on the night following his execution, the killer came back to life. Tisk, don't waste my time. And the sole witness to that mysterious event was you, Mr. Drebber, wasn't it? Not saying anything. If what you saw in the graveyard that night 10 years ago wasn't some chilling fiction but reality, it would make you privy to a very great secret of Dr. Sif's. A secret so profound, it could compel the coroner to agree to collaborate in your evil scheme, in fact. So he was basically blackmailing the coroner, telling her, I know you didn't pronounce him really dead. And so he forced her to collaborate in this crime with killing Dr. Asman. Mr. Drebber, tell the court, tell everyone the truth of what you saw the night in Lowgate's cemetery. So he was the student who saw it. You can see the resemblance actually, can't you? With the man in Madame Tusspells, I mean. Surely he's not going to claim that's really what he saw, especially not after all these years. He was a research student at the University of London, was he? And a bit too clever for his own good, if you ask me. Cuh. What an interesting twist. One at a time, not one person would take me seriously. Yet now here we are, 10 years later, and suddenly my story matters, and in a court of law too. Very well then, if everyone so wishes. Let's be frank, I'll tell you the truth of what happened that night, for what it's worth. Look at how she's staring at him. I like Drebber's theme, that's one of my favorite themes. So Mr. Drebber, your testimony please, about the events of that night, 10 years ago. You will tell the court exactly what you stumbled across in Lowgate Cemetery. Yes, of course, as you wish. in the cemetery 10 years earlier. I want to hear this. The reason I was in Lowgate Cemetery at all 10 years ago was for a spot of moonlighting, shall we say. Yes, the illustration in the newspaper article was based on what I witnessed that night. But thinking back now, I realized that I never actually saw the professor. Soon afterwards, I was visited by a young woman who sculpted a model of me from wax. Then I gave up on my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article. Wait a minute. You're claiming you didn't actually see the professor now. Of course, you'd have to have a screw loose if you could believe a corpse could come back from the dead. But, so you're saying this article is not worth the paper it's printed on? I think that would describe it perfectly. Yes. If the details in the article aren't true, it nullifies your argument for why Mr. Drebber and Dr. Sif would have been working together. No, it's true, so he's discrediting himself to cripple my argument. Tell me, witness. You claim to have been in the cemetery on some auxiliary business. Can you elaborate? That's right, grave robbing, to be precise. Grave robbing. As you know, Lowgate Cemetery is at the rear of Barclay Prison. So among students at the university, I had a reputation for being haunted by the ghosts of condemned convicts. Grave robbing, you say? Yes, exhuming fresh corpses to sell is reasonably lucrative. Of course, I never laid a finger on any valuables buried with the dead. So you are one of the so-called resurrectionists, a particularly unpleasant scourge on society. Actually, my fellows and I went by another name. The repurposers. That is quite beyond the pale. You would invite divine retribution, sir. Yes, well, I think I suffered retribution enough. The Daily Circus eventually unearthed my name and put it in print. It caused me a great many headaches. In the end, I had to leave the university. That was the only paper with the bad grace to identify me unambiguously, I might add. I see. Out of interest, who drew the illustration for this article? Ah yes, that was the reporter who exposed me. He sketched that right in front of me as I described the scene. Obviously, as time ticked on, I bitterly regretted what I'd done. Claiming to have seen something I never truly saw. Foolish, very foolish. Well, counsel for the defense. You may proceed to the cross-examination now. At once, my lord. In the cemetery 10 years earlier. The reason I was in Lowgate Cemetery at all 10 years ago was for a spot of moonlighting, shall we say.
Hold it!
By moonlighting, you mean grave robbing, do you? Surely you only need to look at the graveyard scene and my appearance to gauge the answer to that. The lantern and spade. But who on earth would want to buy a dead body? Any major hospital. A hospital. In order to better understand the human body, the study of anatomy is crucial to medical science. But there isn't a hospital in the world that has enough specimens to work with. Though obviously, they can't openly express an interest in obtaining more by dubious means. As aspiring scientists, we young research students had no money to work with, as I'm sure you can imagine. So we made surreptitious to this arrangement with a hospital via some of our medical student acquaintances. We would never take anything of value from the graves. This is all for the furtherance of science, you see. That's what we told ourselves every time we stole into the graveyard at night, spade in hand. You realize, body snatching is a serious crime. If you were caught, you could expect the gravest of consequences. We students were caught between the hammer and the anvil. We needed funds for research. Professor Hairbrayne said exactly the same. I'm quite speechless at the apparent levity with which you've revealed this abhorrent behavior. Well, if you wanted to know why I was there at Lowgate Cemetery, that's the reason. But I never expected it to end the way it did. That I regret to this day. Yes, the illustration in that newspaper article was based on what I witnessed that night.
Hold it!
The strange happenings at Lowgate Cemetery, which you now deny. Not entirely. I ran to fetch the police at the time, you know. I was shaking like a leaf. But they didn't believe a word of it. In fact, I was very nearly arrested myself. So you went to the papers instead. I started big with the London News, but unsurprisingly, they didn't want to know either. In the end, though, it was reporters from the gossip rags, the gutter press, that came to get my story. And it spread like the plague through the capital, as gossip-hungry Londoners lapped up the tale. The story was in every single paper at the time, with the exception of some broadsheets. And yet only 2 or 3 of them actually interviewed me personally. Most of the accounts turned out to be very interpretive ghost stories. What about the article in Daily Circus? That particular journalist found me at my dormitory. I don't know how, but he discovered my name. So I recounted to him exactly what had happened that night. And from your description, he drew this illustration. Precisely. That's how I learned that the condemned man was the infamous professor. Because the reporter told me so. I had no idea myself, you see. Newspaper reporters are wont to snoop around in matters that don't concern them. So the scene portrayed in the illustration is accurate then. Well, thinking back now, I realize that I never actually saw the professor at all, though.
Hold it!
What are you talking about? I think I explained already, didn't I? Lowgate Cemetery is at the rear of Barclay Prison. So it was renowned among the students at the university for being haunted by the ghosts of condemned convicts. For some absurd reason, I was scared of the graveyard at night. As a result, only too willing to believe that nonsense about the dead coming back to life. But you said you actually saw it. I said what I'd seen in my mind's eye. After all, resurrection is impossible, isn't it? You'd have to be unhinged to think otherwise. Unless, of course, you have some evidence that proves that I encountered the professor that night. I don't know. Is there any material evidence that could show he really did see the professor? If we have anything at all, Mr. Naruhodo, I know, I need to present it against the irritatingly backtracking statement of his. The point is, that night was a pivotal moment in my life. Soon afterwards, I was visited by a young woman who sculpted a model of me from wax.
Hold it!
That young woman being Madame Tusspells, of course. Precisely. I must say, I didn't expect to run into her again like this 10 years later. As I have explained, I went by the name published in the article and, comme ça, I found the man. Yes, the article in Daily Circus, I think you said. I was a poor student with barely a penny to my name at the time. And the young lady put £5 in front of me. So you readily consented to having a waxwork of yourself made, and gave permission for it to be put on display. I did. I should sell what little I had to sell, I concluded. Oui. I remember now. I purchased something else from you that day. N'est-ce pas? Did you? I can't say I remember. What was it, madam? His camera. Ah. Oh yes, I made a point of taking it with me whenever I made an excursion into any cemetery. The camera. You took a camera with you, sir. To what end? To record the details of the bodies I disinterred. But I had no intention of ever visiting a graveyard again after that night, so I sold it. I see. But I still have it, monsieur. It is part of the special exhibit in my House of Horrors. I am very meticulous about such details. The camera is the key. It's the Tusspells way. It would seem, then, that this is the very camera Mr. Drebber took with him to Lowgate Cemetery the night in question. Yes, interesting. The actual camera that Mr. Drebber had with him in the cemetery 10 years ago, and the lens extended, dark staining can be seen on the bellows. Then I gave up on my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article.
Hold it!
This article, you mean? Published in the Daily Circus. Yes, somebody informed the dean that it was my name that appeared in the article, and carelessly let slip that night after night I was digging up graves. Hardly a model student, you might say. The university's reputation was execrably defied, and I was expelled as a result. Mon Dieu, I had no idea. And having been run out of university, you found employment in a somewhat specialist trade. You combined your knowledge of science with knowledge of stage magic to create various experimental machines intended to demonstrate never-before-seen technology. And you used those deceptive machines to trick the government and private investors into giving you money. He's a scammer. Professor Albert Hairbrayne was just your latest victim, wasn't he? Whatever are you talking about? I have no recollection of doing anything of the sort. What's Drebber up to? Why would he suddenly change his tune and recant his claim? Because the coroner is there. I wonder if perhaps it's because his circumstances have changed now. What circumstances? Well, if he admits to having seen a professor emerging alive from his grave 10 years ago now, it will expose a secret in Dr. Sif's past that she would desperately want to hide. Yes, of course. If Drebber and Dr. Sif are working together now, then if Drebber were to betray her, there would be no reason for her to continue to cooperate. In that case, there's only one way around it. I'll have to prove he really did see it. Prove he really did see the professor's corpse coming back from the dead, as he originally claimed. Yes, Mr. Naruhodo, exactly. Let's look at his camera. I want to look at that camera again. This is where the photographed plate goes, I think, isn't it? Yes, that's right. Isn't it incredible to think that this is the actual camera Mr. Drebber used that night? I certainly never imagined a piece of evidence would be on display in Madame Tusspells. She's very keen on everything being as true to life as possible, though, isn't she? Dark staining can be seen in the bellows. What a wonderful machine. You really, love contraptions like this, don't you? Oh yes, anything mechanical I find irresistible. Almost irresistible, surely. There's blood in it. Well, whenever I see a pocket watch, for example, I can't help myself. I simply have to take it apart. That's worrying. Yes, Father tells the time by rubbings of his stomach now. He's given up having a watch. Poor Professor Mikotoba. This. Look, Mr. Naruhodo. What is it? On the bellows. Just here. There seems to be some very dark red stains. Yes, you're right. It looks like blood, actually. Oh my. I'm sure it's not what you're thinking. Ha ha ha. Ha. We're gonna present this. There's blood inside your camera.
Objection!
Oh, that's wrong? How's that wrong? Wait a second. What? Wait. Look at Asman's signature. Look at Asman's signature here. And then on the photo. Asman, too.
Hold it!
Let me press this. Oh, hang on.
Objection!
Oh, no, this doesn't work. The signatures are the same. Asman was a reporter then. The contract.
Objection!
Oh, no, it doesn't work either. You gotta be kidding me. Okay, hang on. I'm gonna have to save. The reporter was Asman, or the one who took the picture, but yet I can't bring that up for some reason. I have to bring that up later, but it's... Thinking back now, I realized that I never actually saw the professor at all, though. The Asman signature. I've already shown it at a few other places and it didn't work, so hopefully it works here.
Objection!
Oh, it did. Sorry, Mr. Drebber, but I don't believe that. Don't believe what? Your latest claim. You did see the professor on that night, 10 years ago. Oh dear. We seem to be at odds. But I was there, and you were not. I know what I didn't see. The illustration with this article was drawn based upon what you told the journalist that you witnessed. A figure emerging from a tomb, wearing an iron mask. Yes, when the killer was tried 10 years ago. It was decided in a closed court's ruling that the man would wear the mask to hide his identity. It wasn't to be removed, even during his execution and subsequent burial. The mask is... I wonder if the mask prevented him from being hanged, if he was being held by the metal part of the mask and not being strangled. Not even the prison wardens were to see the man's face. But obviously, the provision of the mask was not public knowledge. So, Mr. Drebber, as you've just heard... a lowly student of the University of London certainly wouldn't have known about the condemned man's mask. So unless you'd actually seen the professor that night, it's inconceivable that the artist would have included the mask in that illustration. We're definitely on the right track now here, but I want to bring up that signature. That's what I really want to bring up. It's the same signature, like O.D. Asman was the reporter. That's what it was. Look, you see it, Asman. And then if you look at the contract, yeah, look, As man, it's the same signature. Who made the photograph? Well, Mr. Drebber? He's gonna probably say he dug him up. It's a vile scene, isn't it? If you look closely. And as I've already been at pains to point out, I was utterly petrified. Which is why I had it in my head that I'd seen such a blood-curdling sight. But afterwards, I came to my senses and realized that I'd been mistaken. You're still saying you didn't see it. If you're stubbornly sticking to that story, witness, then amend your testimony to explain exactly how you think your eyes deceived you. Thank you, Barrick. Of course. Only too happy to oblige. I can't believe he's still not going to concede the point. What I in fact witnessed was a fellow grave robber at work.
Hold it!
A fellow grave robber? What are you talking about? Well, I wasn't the only one busy in the cemetery that night, you know. Other body snatchers were at work. Of course, when I saw one emerging from the hole he dug, my heart very nearly stopped. So that's the terrifying sight I actually saw, you see. You're claiming it was just another student on equally insalubrious business as yourself. Many of the medical students would wear metal masks to protect them from bacteria during dissections. Clearly, the fellow was using such a mask to protect his anonymity. Metal masks? I don't know about that. Wouldn't you say? But there's more to the story, isn't there? The article goes on to say, in the next second, a gunshot rang out suddenly from behind. The bullet pierced the resurrected man's chest, whose breath then stilled once more. We might assume that the sexton discovered the miscreants at work, perhaps, and fired upon one of them. If a grave digger had been shot in the cemetery, I think it might have been rather big news, my lord. Ah, yes, well, I can only assume it was an embellishment bolted on ladder by the reporter. Oh, what's Madame Tusspells here saying?
Excuse me.
Madame Tusspells, don't take it out on Mr. Sholmes. Huh. Oh, la, pardon. I was lost in my thoughts. Would it be fair to say that Mr. Drebber's last remark was significant to you in some way? I thought it was a little strange, that is all, how Monsieur Drebber could claim this now. If you don't mind me saying, madam, what are you talking about? Well, when I met you 10 years ago at your university dormitory, you recounted to me about your adventures in the cemetery, nun, including the gunshot. Stop. You might want to watch your tongue, you know. Oh, she's saying something important. He's threatening her. He's threatening her. You can't do that. Have a care, Drebber. That's no way to speak to a lady. Please, Madame Tusspells, carry on. Of course. According to what Monsieur Drebber told me at the time, he did hear a gunshot from behind him, and the bullet hit the condemned man. I said nothing of the sort. None. You were very explicit about the details. About the mask that the figure was wearing. And the blood that splattered over you when he was shot. Enough. Shut up, woman. You're making all this up. No, we have the proof. The camera has blood in it, remember? That will do. Mr. Drebber. Yes? You refute the account just given by Madame Tusspells? I have no recollection of ever saying those things. Come on, do you really expect us to believe you? Control yourself, counsel. I will not permit baseless accusations in my courtroom. Well, he's lying. Right. Under the circumstances, I think it best that you supplement your testimony with a statement to clarify your position on this witness. Very well. There was no gunshot from behind me at all, nor any spattering blood. No, I disagree. The camera. Remember the camera, guys? Let's take a look at it one more time. Here. This was the camera that he had with him. Look. Blood. Inside the camera there. The thing is, 10 years later, blood wouldn't look like this. It would be black, but, you know, that's just for sake of the game, I guess. But this.
Objection!
Mr. Drebber, do you remember this camera? But that is the camera from the that fateful night. Yes, we borrowed it from the House of Horrors. It's the camera you took with you to the cemetery that night, Mr. Drebber. And, is that supposed to be significant? Yes, it is. This kind of camera is rarely seen in our homeland, so my colleague and I were keen to examine it closely. We noticed that the lens extends forward on the end of some bellows. Like this.
Hold it!
What's that? There, just on the bellows. You saw what I'm talking about, Zieks. It looks like a dark red stain. That's right. It's a rather conspicuous mark here on the bellows, in fact. Good lord, are you suggesting? Yes, my lord. It would appear to be a spatter of blood. Something that could be confirmed with a simple chemical test. Isn't that right, Dr. Sif? It would be difficult to determine if it was human blood, and not the blood of some animal. But yes, to test whether or not it's blood at all is simple enough. I propose that Madame Tusspells' testimony was correct, and that on the night in question 10 years ago, you were spattered with blood from the gunshot wound. Well, and that furthermore, you really did witness the condemned professor emerging from his tomb. Grr. We got this now. There's simply no way you could have forgotten such a traumatic experience. In other words, the only explanation is that you're trying to hide the fact that you saw the professor that night.
Objection!
But why? Why would he want to do that? Well, not for his own gain, it would seem. For whose then? Who could benefit? Mr. Drebber is obviously lying in order to protect somebody. My goodness, he's shielding someone. Yes, my lord. And clearly, it's someone who doesn't want the truth about the professors coming back to life to be exposed. Well, counsel, who is it then? Who is this witness trying to protect by lying about what he saw that night? It's the coroner. Courtney Sif.
Take that!
The obvious answer is Dr. Sif. Sif. What? Whatever do you mean? Imagine if the convict who'd been sentenced to death was not in fact killed. Imagine if that was to come to light. What are you insinuating? And imagine if the convict in question was the country's most hated mass murderer. If it was the professor, that would be an unprecedented scandal.
Objection!
This is beyond a joke. Need I point out that the dead cannot come back to life? What you're suggesting would mean that the execution never really happened. Yes, that's exactly what it would mean.
Objection!
Once a man is sentenced to the gallows, he hangs. No one could escape, not in Great Britain.
Objection!
But the fact is, there was a witness to the fact that the man did escape his hanging. If that were really true, counsel, the implications of misconduct would not stop at the supervising coroner. It would taint the honor of the entire judiciary from the ground up. So this is what she meant by Pandora's box. And it's exactly because of those monumental repercussions that Dr. Sif would consent to any demand made of her by someone who threatened to expose the secret, even if that meant being complicit in a crime. You mean... I mean that Dr. Sif wasn't collaborating in Mr. Drebber's wicked scheme. She was coerced into collaborating in order to protect her decade-old secret. She switched the dead body of Mr. Asman with the waxwork model and fabricated the autopsy report. Oh. Lord Van Zieks? Pray forgive my freshly filled hallowed chalice, and a whole raft of other discourtesies now. Goodness me. It's just the sort of tall tale the Londoners would enjoy, I grant you. An executed killer rising from the dead. A Scotland Yard cover-up. A conspiracy at the highest levels. So let me ask you one thing. What's that? If the condemned man really did emerge from his tomb that night, only to be shot in the chest, who pulled the trigger and disposed of him forever? That's a really good question. I have no idea at the moment. We have too little information to work that out at present, I think. I couldn't agree more. The Old Bailey is no place for wild fantasies. And have you considered this, my learned Nipponese friend? Considered what? Do you realize just what a dangerous endeavor it would be to coerce this woman into such criminal activity? It's tantamount to declaring war on the entire British police force and judiciary. Quite. Hard to imagine any sum of money being offered for research could warrant it. To rely on some stage deception when so much is at stake would be madness. Well, I suppose. And this was no petty crime either. The victim was murdered. A man who had already invested money in the venture and would be instrumental in future profits too. Yes, I had no reason to kill Mr. Asman at all. No, you had a reason. He was the reporter. Or are you forgetting that his death results in me receiving not a single penny? The court is already aware of the contract between myself and the victim, no? There is the contract, that's very true. The motive for this case runs deep, though. I can feel it. Using threats to force the head of the forensic investigation team to cooperate is extreme. Especially for a government grant he had no guarantee of receiving in the first place. If the research grant was the aim, taking Mr. Asman's life would have made no sense anyway. Which means, Mr. Drebber's motive wasn't money at all. He was just trying to kill Mr. Asman. But why? What was his motive then? The signature! Your time is up, my learned friend. I'd say you have one last chance before the jury loses their patience with this charade. Let's see if you can back up your heady proposal, shall we? How do you explain why the engineer would throw all his caution to the wind and threaten his own country? At this point, I'm not prepared to listen to any more of this outlandish conjecture without proof. So, counsel, present your evidence. Alright, who exactly was Mr. Asman to Drebber? There's a connection that no one's seen yet. And I'm going to have to present 2 pieces of evidence to show what it is. Okay, now here it is. The contract and the newspaper. The newspaper signature on the picture. That's it. That's what I had to show now at this point. I was trying to show that earlier because it is relevant. It's important. I noticed something much earlier in the case that I wasn't supposed to until this point. Explains why the victim, the evidence that, okay, motive. Okay, we're gonna bring in the contract first.
Take that!
Mr. Drebber, I have here the contract you signed with Mr. Asman. Yes, that's right. That's the very document in fact. That proves I had no reason to kill the man. No, I'm afraid not. As it turns out, this contract actually helps to establish the real motive for the murder you committed. It does? Well, I never. What are you talking about? Read it again, you idiot. I'm not finished. In order to demonstrate what your motive really was, I need this contract and one other piece of evidence. What other evidence? Counsel, you will present your supplementary evidence without delay. The evidence, which when cross-referenced with the contract, establishes a motive for the deed. Okay, so guys, look at this. This is what I was onto earlier. The contract, where is it? Okay, here it is, look. Look at the signature. Asman, right there. Left signature. Look at the newspaper. Asman, right there. Signature. I noticed that earlier and I was trying to present it, but it didn't work. That's the motive there.
Take that!
It's this newspaper article, my lord. That was written 10 years ago, and every detail has been examined already. What can it possibly tell us? That drivel should never have been written. It's typical gutter press nonsense that means nothing.
Objection!
But there's something significant that this newspaper article and the contract have in common. Really. And it's that common link. That shows very clearly why you were determined to kill Mr. Odie Asman. It seems the defense has uncovered something the rest of us have missed. So, my learned friend, point out what these two pieces of evidence have in common. Where exactly is the link between the newspaper article and the contract? Right here, this.
Take that!
What these two pieces of evidence have in common is a signature. A signature? The signature on the illustration that accompanies the 10-year-old article, and the signature on the contract. It belonged to the same person. What? Ah. As the court has heard, this illustration was drawn 10 years ago by the newspaper reporter who found Mr. Drebber and interviewed him about his ordeal. If you look closely, the reporter's signature can be seen in the bottom right corner of the drawing. And if you look at the contract here, which was signed between the witness and the victim last year, you can clearly see Mr. Asman's signature at the bottom. Yup, let me see now. Good lord, yes. They're identical. In short, the journalist who drew the illustration and wrote the article published about Mr. Drebber 10 years ago was the victim of this case, Mr. Odie Asman.
Objection!
But explain to the court, why? Why would that constitute a motive for the witness to murder Asman? Because his career was ruined. He got expelled. Well, if you think back, you remember that Mr. Drebber talked about that article in his testimony. He said it ruined his life. Grave robbing, you say? Yes, exhuming fresh corpses to sell is reasonably lucrative. That is quite beyond the pale. You would invite a divine retribution, sir. Yes, well, I think I suffered retribution enough. The Daily Circus eventually unearthed my name and put it in print. It caused me a great many headaches. In the end, I had to leave the university. That was the only paper with the bad grace to identify me unambiguously, I might add. Then I gave up on my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article. At the time, you were a student at the University of London who dreamt of becoming a scientist. However, this single newspaper article changed your entire life. So Mr. Asman used to be a newspaper journalist, did he? He did, my lord. In fact, it's a widely held belief that Asman managed to position himself at the heart of his criminal network, thanks to many dubious connections he made during his time as a reporter. So, you had to give up on your dream and leave university. You lost everything. Eventually, you found yourself working in the field of science, but only in the shadows. And all because of that article, written by Mr. Asman. Enough! Stop this endless drivel about my life. What? Explain yourself, Mr. Drebber. Yes, it's true. I had to leave the university as a result of that article. But it was just a straw that broke the camel's back. What do you mean? Almost every student of science in the faculty was too poor to actually conduct any research, but they struggled on with their hypothesis anyways. We all did, only to have them taken by vultures. Sooner or later, you knew your ideas would be stolen and patented by some wretch or other after all. Good gracious. Making a name for yourself as a scientist in a climate like that was a miracle only select few geniuses could ever hope to achieve. Personally, I wasn't one of those geniuses, so it was hardly a wrench. Being forced out of the university because of Lowgate was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Objection!
Mr. Drebber, do you genuinely believe that? Of course I do. No. Who's better placed to know whether or not I possess a talent for science than me? I'm sorry to say that your words don't ring true at all. How dare you? And I have evidence to prove it. The trophy. The trophy. How are you in a position to say anything about me? I don't know you from Adam. Fine. If you think you have evidence, go ahead. Show it. What could you possibly have to disprove the idea that I was happy to leave the university because I lack talent? The trophy. Royal Society Trophy for Excellence in Science that was found in Mr. Drebber's workshop. It's a very prestigious award for a young scientist. Here we go.
Take that!
Do you remember this, Mr. Drebber? We found it at your workshop. Is that a Royal Society Trophy for Excellence in Science? What exactly is this trophy, Council? It's the greatest honor that can be bestowed on a young scientist, my lord. There is no higher accolade. It recognizes emerging talent and promises a bright future. Good gracious. Your prospects for the future were excellent, weren't they, Mr. Drebber? Because even then, you were a genius in your field. But you lost everything. You had no more future. Your talents would go to waste. All as a result of this one newspaper article. I don't know when you realized who Mr. Asman was, but when it dawned on you that he was the same journalist who 10 years ago ruined your life. It's abundantly clear that you had no intention of forgiving the man. The truth is, finally, he's going to fold. What? Who? Ha. Fine. Clearly this has run its course now. What? I admit it. All of it. What? What are you doing? It's exactly as the Japanese man said. I was coerced into going along with this man's plot to murder the victim, on the condition that he kept my dirty secret from 10 years ago. No. Good lord. Look at the good lord. The way the judge said it just now. Dr. Sif, do you realize what you're saying, woman? It's all true. That day, when I arrived at the Crystal Tower and saw the birdcage, my heart nearly stopped beating. That memory from a decade ago that I'd done my best to bury deep inside myself. It was the professor again, staring me in the face. And then, before I had a chance to react, I noticed something else. There was a note tucked inside the model's jacket. Dr. Sif, you will go along with my plan. From someone who knows the truth about what really happened that night, 10 years ago. All the instructions were there in the note. Every detail was meticulously written out. I had no choice but to do what it said. I made the necessary alterations to the scene and fabricated the autopsy report as instructed. There was really no other choice. It had to be done to protect the judiciary. I can only apologize now. Somehow I feel this trial isn't over. Why on earth would you buckle now? Well, there's no point trying to hide it anymore, is there? I would have done anything to stop it coming out, even collaborated in a murder. But the great lie about the execution 10 years ago has been exposed. Whatever happens, I'm finished. So then, Mr. Drebber, what do you say to that? Your accomplice has admitted everything. Surely it goes without saying. You admit your part in it too, then? I admit nothing. At all. What? Have you forgotten that the kinesis machine was ripped to shreds by an explosion? Short of me admitting to a crime, there's really no possible way for you to prove I did anything wrong. No. But now at this point, you can't condemn Professor Hairbrayne. Professor Hairbrayne should be released at this point because Dr. Sif pretty much admitted that this is about what had happened. So there's no reason to prosecute Professor Hairbrayne anymore for this. Order, order, order. Whatever this man says, I admit everything. He threatened to expose my secret, so I went along with his plan. And Lord Van Zieks. Yes? I hope you accept my apologies. What happens next is in your hands, of course. I have heard more than enough now. I hereby present the final findings of this court. This trial is not the proper forum in which to pursue the alleged wrongdoings of Mr. Drebber. The defendant is Professor Albert Hairbrayne. Very true. It had slipped my mind. Isn't he one of your closest friends? As the court has heard, Dr. Sif admitted to the allegations brought by the defense, thereby absolving the defendant of any possible guilt. Finally, finally, the judge said exactly what I was saying, that there's really no sense in prosecuting Professor Hairbrayne anymore. You mean, at the present time, it is the conclusion of this court that the defendant was not involved in any wrongdoing. Does the prosecution have any objection? None, my lord. Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo. You've proven Professor Hairbrayne's innocence. Without further ado then, the adjudication. Unless the prosecution and defense have any other matters to discuss. I don't know. This doesn't feel quite right, yeah. It doesn't feel over yet, though. Why did Dr. Sif suddenly admit to it like that? Is everything alright, Mr. Naruhodo? Yeah, I felt it too. I felt like something's off. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like, we're winning right now. The trial is set to end now. The judge will certainly deliver a verdict of not guilty. But is that really what we want? What the defense should be pushing for now is... I mean, in reality, in real life, you would want immediate adjudication. That's what you would want. But I want to get to the bottom of what happened. I mean, I'm gonna save here. Our job as a lawyer is to find our client not guilty, but that's immediate adjudication, but I want to know what happened.
Objection!
The defense objects to the trial ending at this time, my lord. I beg your pardon? We demand one final testimony. We want to get to the bottom of this. What? You do realize I'm about to adjudicate in favor of your client, I presume. What are you playing at now, my Nipponese friend? Why would you want to obstruct the conclusion of the trial at this point? No defense lawyer in his right mind would do that. Yep, he's right on that. Mr. Naruhodo, what exactly are you thinking? The truth, the whole truth, and a way to bring it all out into the open. Right. Yes, in hindsight. Ah yes, the one word of warning before I go. If in fact the course of the trial this afternoon you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To the bitter end, you understand? Do not falter, whatever may come to pass. I'm sure Mr. Sholmes knew. He must have deduced that this would happen. Yes, I'm here in court to advocate for my client, and to secure an acquittal. Obviously. But that's not at all. I believe that I have a duty to the court to pursue the whole truth of the case, until every last detail is laid bare. And that is why the defense calls for further testimony from Dr. Sif. Testimony from me. About what? About the nature of your collaboration with Mr. Enoch Drebber. Ha, in case it escaped your attention, I've already admitted to everything I did. The whole truth has already been revealed. So stop wasting everyone's time. As his lordship made very plain, your client will get the acquittal you wanted for him. There's simply no point protracting this business further with another tedious cross-examination.
Objection!
Oh. Pray forgive my careless handling of that hallowed bottle. I slipped. That's what you call it? What is your objection, Lord Van Zieks? The prosecution also calls for supplementary testimony from the witness. Don't be stupid. If there is more to this case than has yet to come to light, then I will join my learned friend in pursuing the facts until the bitter end. Thank you, Lord Van Zieks. You'll what? Lord Van Zieks. This is most irregular, to say the least. However, as the prosecution also calls for it, I will uphold the request. Notice how, like, this case is really well done. Like, you're thinking the case is about to end, and, like, the victory music is about to play, like that music, like, when the trial's ending, and then it just stops. Dr. Sif, you will testify for the court, explaining the full extent of your involvement in the murder apparently committed by Mr. Drebber. Very well. I want to hear this now. The waxwork plot. It all began at the scene when I saw the waxwork in the note tucked inside its jacket. The actual body of the victim, as indicated in the note's instructions, was beneath the experimentation stage. The body had to be arranged in certain ways to implicate the defendant, which was my job. I'm starting to think that the professor might be Barrick's brother. I enlisted the help of the entire forensic investigation team to address the scene appropriately. The truth about the execution 10 years ago is a state secret of the highest level. I had to protect it. Let's get to the bottom of this. Something's not right here. So I was right. The stage and the machine were all specially designed for the deception. So it seems. And all meticulously prepared. You did well to see through it. You're a very shrewd boy. So kind of you to say. And what about this autopsy report, then? All I did was record the location of the body as being in the Crystal Tower instead of under the stage. That's all. That's a terrible corruption. Only my team were aware of the deceit, and then only under my explicit instructions. Nobody else in Scotland Yard knew anything about it, I assure you. We must be thankful for small mercies, I suppose. Well, I believe that testimony has clarified everything. There's no particular need for a cross-examination, I would say. No, I disagree. I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. Yeah, me too. You know, I feel it too, that there's something that we don't know yet. And that's about the professor. What happened 10 years ago? Just look at that expression in Dr. Sif's face. Yeah, it's starting to creep me out. It's the defense's right to cross-examine any witness following testimony. Tisk, what is it about you Japanese that makes you all so doggedly persistent? Very well. If you so desire, counsel, proceed with the cross-examination. Yes, my lord. It all began at the scene when I saw the waxwork and the note tucked inside its jacket.
Hold it!
From what you described before, it sounds like the note was anonymous. Did you have any idea of who was behind it? There are very few people in the know about what really happened 10 years ago to start with. Well, anyway, I never heard of this engineer. So no, I had no idea. Yet despite not knowing who was behind the plan, you went along with it. I had no choice. Protecting the professor's secret was my only concern. But the horse is bolted now, and the stable door will never shut again. Scotland Yard's reputation will be immeasurably damaged as a result of all of this. Yes, thank you, Lord Van Zieks. I'm well aware of that. So as I understand it, what you found in the birdcage was the waxwork model. Where then was the victim's body? The actual body of the victim, as indicated in the note's instructions, was beneath the experimentation stage.
Hold it!
So you knew about the special construction of the stage used to carry out the trick then. It was quite obvious what had happened with the victim and the waxwork. And you switched the two over, didn't you? In other words, you recorded the victim's body as having been discovered in the Crystal Tower, and the waxwork, I wrapped it and sent it by carriage to the specified address at the specified time. And why were you given such directions? Presumably, so it could be recovered by Drebber and returned to Madame Tusspells. I see, and then you put the birdcage back to the experimentation stage. Yes, although someone obviously made a mistake about which cage should go where. I thought I'd made it perfectly clear to the team, but still. I suppose you were focused on the victim's body, that being a more important detail. The body had to be arranged in certain ways to implicate the defendant, which was my job.
Hold it!
When you say arranged, I presume you mean with this. Yes, the instructions in the engineer's note said something along the lines of, fabricate some evidence to make it clear that Hairbrayne alone could have killed Asman. So, you mean that was your doing? I fetched Hairbrayne's ridiculous screwdriver from the stage, and took it with me alone to the abyss under the stage where the birdcage had fallen. Alone, Doctor. And she stabbed the body, so that's where the stab wound comes from. I didn't feel it would be appropriate to involve anybody else in that particular part of the deception. There was a void under the stage where I found a birdcage lying in the dirt. I approached it, leaned down, and slowly opened it up. Then, I took the screwdriver in both hands and plunged it into the man's chest. And then you noted that in your fake autopsy report. As a fictitious cause of death. Fictitious cause of death. Exactly. So, the actual cause of death was... he broke his neck, the trauma resulting from the 30-foot drop. My word. What is it, Mr. Zato? Something about Dr. Sif's last statement is playing on my mind, that's all. Yes, mine too. Dr. Sif. There's really no need to shout. I can hear you perfectly well. The defense calls for you to add what you said to your formal testimony. Oh? Which part? What I want her to supplement her testimony with is... The real cause of death, or what she did to the victim. The real cause of death or what she did to the victim. How you stabbed Mr. Asman in the chest, that part. Fine, if that's what you want. But there's really no need to the point. The prosecution concurs. Very well. You will supplement your testimony now, witness. If you wish, my lord. I stood over the victim's corpse where it lay in the top of the cage, and plunged a screwdriver into the chest.
Hold it!
So it was you who stabbed Asman with this? Yes. Far easier than dissection, I assure you. No precision required. What a welcome change. The victim died instantly from a snapped neck. All I did was carry out the instructions that had been given. And unflinchingly as ever, no doubt. I imagine you didn't bat an eyelid when you drove the weapon into his body. There was no need to bat my eyelids. A coroner sees dead bodies a lot, so if she was really in on this, you know, stabbing the body wouldn't really be much. Not saying that coroners, you know, coroners, because they see death so much, they're used to it. You know, they're not as freaked out by it as other people. So stabbing the body, I don't think would freak her out as much as other people. And what else did you do to twist the facts? Remind the court, why didn't you? If you wish. I enlisted the help of the entire forensic investigation team to dress this scene appropriately.
Hold it!
The entire team, in perverting the course of justice. My team consists of the very best investigators there are. I demand loyalty from all members. We operate on a code of chivalry of sorts. You aid and abet a murderer, commit perjury, and dare talk of chivalry. Yup, exactly. Good point there, Ryu. It was a matter of priorities. What? Nothing was more important than protecting the secret of the professor. My team did what was necessary without losing sight of the primary goal. I considered their conduct exemplary. Don't concede the point, Mr. Naruhodo. You mustn't let her win. I need a lawyer. I'll take that silence as tacit acceptance. Now, can we move on? The truth about the execution 10 years ago is a state secret at the highest level. I had to protect it. But at what cost? Faith in Scotland Yard is going to suffer a terrible blow as a result of this. And your precious secret is out now anyway. Yes, as you say. And I take full responsibility. Blow me down, Dr. Sif. Surely there was some other way you could have protected the secret. No, there really wasn't. I've done my utmost, believe me. In many ways, I respect your determination. Ooh, I nearly froze under that cold stare as she said that. I do believe she was being genuine, though, Mr. Naruhodo. So, that's her story. She's admitted everything and revealed her full involvement in the crime. I do wonder if there could really be much more to it. Well, I don't know, but I just have a feeling. Do you, Mr. Naruhodo? The truth is, I find it strange too. How these two are reacting to this in completely opposite ways, I mean. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that is a bit strange. For some reason, I feel sure they're still trying to hide something. I think what they're trying to hide is what happened 10 years ago.
Hold it!
Okay, hang on here. Let's try to look at the other one here now. This case is really good. Like, really good. Like, I didn't expect this case to get this good right now. Like, I thought that this case, you know, I thought this case was simply about, like, a scammer, but it turns out much more than that. Like, this case, like, just started out with with that whole experimentation thing, when going to something like 10 years ago, then I took the screwdriver in both hands and plunged it into the man's chest. Have her change it. Let's see. Dr. Sif, what you said before about the real cause of death. I believe that may be significant, so could you change your supplementary statement to explain that instead? Very well. The actual cause of death was a neck trauma Asman suffered from the 30-foot fall.
Hold it!
You're quite sure of that? It was as a result of a broken neck. Yes. As a professional, that was more than apparent. You'd never know just by looking at the photograph of the victim, though, would you? No, that's very true. Obviously not. Which is precisely why coroners are needed to determine the actual facts. Yes, assuming they can be trusted. Oh. There's no point calling her assessment into question without evidence. Let's get back to the testimony. Very well. I wonder, could he still have been alive when she stabbed him? Is that even possible? The real cause of death was a neck trauma. Let's have her change it. What are they both hiding? She admitted to most of it, but they're still hiding something else. It's something to do with this. It's something with this, but I have to really think carefully. The real cause of death was actually... was the neck trauma. I gotta think carefully on this.
Hold it!
I wish I could just have both statements so I could go back to them.
Objection!
No, it's not it. Okay, I'm gonna save my game here, just to be careful. I stood over the victim's corpse where it lay in the toppled cage and plunged a screwdriver into the chest. It crashed down with the victim inside. But couldn't this have been maybe flipped over? Isn't that a possibility?
Objection!
Oh, it worked! What's the inconsistency here? I've got a nasty feeling that this inconsistency points to an extremely uncomfortable truth. What on earth is the matter, Counsel? Have you lost your tongue? I apologize, my lord. Dr. Sif, in that last statement of yours, there's just one point that seems to defy explanation. Out with it, my learned friend. There's an obvious inconsistency between your description and this photograph, which shows the victim in the birdcage following the events that led to his death.
Objection!
The court has already examined the photograph in depth. There's nothing new we can learn from it.
Objection!
Yes, we have already considered it, that's true. But we now know the facts to be different. What do you mean? I believe we should let the defense explain. Where in this photograph will we see the alleged inconsistency with the witness's statement? Let me see. I'm assuming it would be the wound. What's with the wound that can...
Take that!
Look closely at the bloodstain on the victim's chest. Oh, it's working. It clearly extends in a downwards direction towards the man's feet. Oh, that's right. It is. Oh, I see now. I see the inconsistency. I see what's wrong now. Damn, how could I have missed this? I'm such an idiot. I see it now. My camera was just blocking it most of the time because I play my game right through OBS, so I actually don't see part of my screen where my camera is on. But the inconsistency, basically what's going on is, look at the wound. I see it now. The wound is like a downwards direction. It's like somebody took like a sharp object and like plunged it and then like went down with it. That's what it is. But a screwdriver would make just like a simple, like, you know, a stab like that. But she said that all she did was just stab. But this stab is more than that. It goes in a downwards position. Something's wrong with that. But what does that mean though? That's what I'm curious about. She had already admitted to stabbing him, but what could that mean? And why is that significant, counsel? It's different from what she's saying, because if it was a single stab wound, it would be different, like she claims. Like she just plunged in his chest, but for some reason the wound goes down. It's different than what she described she did. If the victim was stabbed moments before the kinesis machine was set in motion, that's entirely expected. Ah, of course, no. That's not what happened. Exactly, my lord. Dr. Sif made it very clear in her testimony just now that the point at which she stole Professor Hairbrayne's screwdriver and stabbed the victim was after the grand deception was set in motion, when the birdcage had fallen below the stage at a site. From the shape of it, it's clear that the birdcage would have fallen on its side after the 30-foot drop, and if the victim had really been stabbed whilst inside the birdcage in that position, the blood from the wound would have spread out equally in all directions. Yeah, that's right, because if it was on its side, the blood would have just gushed all over. The wound would have just spilt the blood everywhere. For it to have formed the longitudinal appearance we see in the picture is inconceivable. Ah, look at how baffled she is. Given that the victim's blood vertically downwards from the wound, it must be the case that when you stabbed Mr. Asman, he was standing up. In short, Dr. Sif, your latest testimony was a total fabrication. She stabbed him when he was still alive? I knew it. I was right. Now I've identified the contradiction. There's only one way to explain the facts. We've all been under a great misapprehension here. What? What sort of misapprehension? That's the Ace Attorney theme right now. Dr. Sif. You claim you were coerced into helping Mr. Drebber as a result of the note he left in the waxwork. You claim that you made changes to the scene of the crime to implicate the defendant. And you claim that you offered a fake autopsy report to cover your tracks. But one of those claims is an out-and-out lie. Because the question of what the bloodstain really tells us has only one possible answer. If that is the case, what is it, man? She killed him. Counsel, you've clearly struck upon a revelation. Now tell the court what it is. Which part of Dr. Stiff's story is shown to be a lie? I'm gonna save here. It would be the stabbing of the victim. I only got one chance, that's why I saved, just to be safe, but it would be the stabbing of the victim, I think, because it's not how she was coerced. It's not the autopsy report. It's the stabbing of the victim. That's pretty much what it is. She stabbed him when he was still alive. That's really what happened. When the birdcage fell down, he probably was still alive, and she stabbed him then. That's why she admitted to it, because she didn't want to. How ironic is that we beat a coroner examining the body? The answer is very simple if you consider the sequence of events. If when the victim was stabbed, the blood from the wound seeped downwards as it did, we can be sure that the victim must have been either sitting or standing upright at the time. But as you rightly pointed out, the birdcage would have fallen on its side when it fell beneath the stage. Yes, it would, which tells us that the victim must have been in that position of his own accord.
Objection!
That's impossible. The man was dead, remember? No, that is the misapprehension. He was still alive. When the birdcage fell from the stage into the void below, it must have hit the ground with considerable force. I knew it, he was still alive, oh my god. But Mr. Asman didn't die in the fall. He probably lost consciousness for a while, but when he came around, he got to his feet to climb out of the cage. Just as Dr. Sif appeared. If the victim was in fact alive at that point in time, it changes everything. She stabbed him when he was still alive. Mr. Odie Asman's killer wasn't the defendant, Professor Albert Hairbrayne. Nor was it the mastermind behind the stage trickery, Mr. Enoch Drebber. It was you, Dr. Courtney Sif. Order, order, order. Can this possibly be true? Have you been taking me for a fool? It was you, was it? You killed him? You hoped that by admitting to being an accomplice in Mr. Drebber's scheme, the trial would end, before you were accused of a far worse crime. Cold-blooded murder. Oh, do shut up. You're so desperate now you're making all this up, as if I would do something like that.
Objection!
I assure you, the defense is not desperate, Doctor. Mr. Naruhodo has established the facts using evidence and logic alone. Ha, logic. Don't make me laugh. Sadly, your logic has a gaping hole in it. What? What do you mean? Tisk, I'd thought it was obvious. A motive, boy. You're lacking a motive. What possible reason would I have to kill Mr. Asman? Asman was involved in any number of criminal activities, from coercion to theft to murder. But there is no known connection to Dr. Sif there. I'm rather relieved to say it does seem somewhat far-fetched. True, there's no obvious motive, but there's still something in the back of my mind. I feel sure I've seen something somewhere that hints at why the coroner might have done this. Yes, I might have tampered with the crime scene and concocted a fake report, but murdering someone for no reason is a very different story.
Objection!
No, when you questioned what possible reason you could have for wanting to kill Mr. Asman, something did come to mind. What? What was it, Counsel? Enlighten the court at once. Yes, we saw it yesterday, didn't we? Something that seemed strange, but we had no reason to suspect it at the time. There's a particular object that explains why Dr. Sif would have wanted to kill Mr. Asman. Gonna save here just in case. Screwdriver, no. Scalpels? Wait. Is it? No. The scalpels, I remember now. When we were in Dr. Sif's laboratory, she had an insane amount of scalpels. Like, there was way more scalpels than she needed. And I was thinking of whether the government was using those bodies as, like, experimentations for forensic science. I think it's the scalpels. I don't think it's the mask. Let's see. It's a scalpel. Or rather, scalpels. Did you say scalpels? Ah. Yeah, I remember now. It was in her laboratory. She had, like, an order placed for, like, hundreds of them. It would appear that that word has struck a chord, Doctor. You, come on, out with it. It was yesterday, when we visited your laboratory. Look at this big, thick book here. It appears to be an accounting ledger. It's a record of the forensic investigation team's spending, I think. Oh. What is it? It's clear that the team purchases various equipment and supplies on a monthly basis, but... well, one entry seems rather strange. Really? In what way? They're buying 500 scalpels every month. $500 scalpels a month. At first, I wondered what on earth you could possibly use that many scalpels for. But actually, I realize now it's not the scalpels themselves that are significant. It's the money for them, disappearing every month from the department's accounts. So she's stealing money. Asman's criminal organization relied heavily on extortion for its funding. Tracing the money from the forensic investigation team's account to find out where it was going would be extremely straightforward. So Asman was involved in that too? It was a scam that he was running. They were buying scalpels, but really, she was pocketing the money. 10 years ago, Mr. Asman was still a journalist and wrote this article about Mr. Drebber. He may well have stumbled upon information as he was researching the story. Information relating to Dr. Sif's darkest secret that he would use to rack money from her for the next decade. Her darkest secret? Good lord, you mean... I don't know what happened on the night of that execution 10 years ago. But clearly the opportunity to rid yourself of that menace was too tempting to pass up. So I get it now. He was extorting her. That's what he was doing. He was telling her to place orders on scalpels, except she wasn't. She just recorded that in the ledger, and because she was the head coroner, nobody would question it. But really, Asman was pocketing the difference from that. So he was basically blackmailing her on what happened to the professor. So in the end, you weren't coerced at all, were you? You did it entirely of your own free will. You stabbed Mr. Asman in the heart with all your might. To silence the blackmailer who knew your dark secret forever. You'll never understand. None of you. What we've had to keep covered up all these long years. What is it? I want to know. What is this big cover-up, this big secret? Out with it. As very little of the machine remains after it was ripped apart by the bomb, the truth of this case can never be properly established unless you speak out. And if you decide not to, it's very possible that Courtney Sif will escape punishment for her crimes. Please, sir, own up to what you've done, and tell this court the truth about what happened. 10 years ago, you told the truth, and you were robbed of a bright and successful future as a result. I can certainly understand your bitterness and your consternation now. However, this is surely the chance you've been waiting for, to sever the hold that fates had over you all these years. Super high voltage instantaneous kinesis. I mean, really? It's the addle-brained mock scientists that are the worst, you know. They don't recognize the fact that they don't have talent. They can't even get that right. And so they end up chasing impossible dreams, having unbridled faith in their abilities. They go on about their wonderful hypothesis, their stupid eyes shutting like a little child's. They make me sick. I can't abide their foolishness. Careful, Mr. Drebber. I was particularly pleased with the kinesis machine. It made for quite a show, didn't it? So you admit it. You admit that it was nothing more than a sham made for the purpose of killing the victim. Yes, I admit it. I did it all, in the name of revenge. Revenge for the future that Mr. Asman's article had deprived you of 10 years earlier. But the revenge you sought didn't stop at Asman, did it? Which is where that very particular waxwork comes in. Yes, I see. The condemned convict that you saw rising from the grave in Lowgate Cemetery 10 years ago. If your account of those events was all true, then obviously Scotland Yard's couldn't afford to acknowledge what had happened, even if it meant discrediting a bright young man and crushing any future career he might have had. So your plan required that you abduct that particular waxwork model in order to exact your revenge on Scotland Yard as well, or on Dr. Sif to be precise. It was a year ago. By some extraordinary twist of fate, Asman turned up at my workshop. He didn't remember who I was, of course. He just wanted to employ my services as an engineer. And he happened to have a paper with him. An article on the front page caught my eye. About the coroner who'd handled that bogus autopsy being appointed head of a new forensic team. When I learned that news, my cognitive processes started to devise the plan. What a horrid tale. He robbed me of my future, so I wanted to use the man's own wiles against him, for revenge, and have that rotten Scotland Yard eating out of my hand at the same time. I wanted them all to suffer the same humiliation I've had to suffer. But what happened 10 years ago? Your actions against those who'd ruined your future were justified as revenge, at least, to yourself. Certainly, no one has the right to destroy another's prospect, especially for purely selfish gain. And yet, in carrying out your plan, you did exactly that to someone else, didn't you? Did I? Yeah, you did it to Professor Hairbrayne. Professor Hairbrayne's only crime was passion for his hypothesis. But you had no compunction about sacrificing his future to effect your revenge. You knew that he would be forever branded a failure and a fraud. Perhaps life treated you unfairly 10 years ago, and others' misconduct left your life in tatters. But remember this. Your own actions resulted in exactly the same thing for another perfectly innocent young man. I... Lord Van Zieks, what of Dr. Sif? An immediate warrant for her arrest has been granted, and she's been remanded in custody, my lord. I presume she will face trial in the coming days, along with Mr. Drebber. But what happened 10 years ago? We still weren't told what happened. The professor got out of the grave all of a sudden? She's made great contributions to her profession over the years. It really is a hard truth to swallow. However, that is a topic for some future occasion. For now, Professor Hairbrayne. Oh, yes? It seems that there was a great deal more to your experiment than you realized. However, I think we can assume now that all the sordid details have been brought to light. This has been a very long and profound trial, but I'm pleased to say you are absolved of all guilt. This whole experience has taught me a very great but painful lesson. I've been, this dedicated scientist, this devotee of natural philosophy. I've been selfish and self-centered, and above all, a fool. Professor, I've spent my life thinking of nothing but my research, misguidedly believing that I could do whatever I set my mind to despite my lack of talent. And the worst of it is, in the name of process, I've caused others pain and misery, others who are far, far greater people than I. No, Professor, that's not true. What? Don't tar yourself with the same brush as Drebber. What happened was his doing, and his alone. This outcome is his fate, not yours. You're not to blame, in any way. Lord Van Zieks, and the derision with which he referred to you earlier, calling you a fool, talentless even. The man has no idea. To believe in yourself and work your fingers to the bone to realize your dreams, that's laudable, not laughable. No one has the right to deride another for such choices. Well said. Oh. Thank you, Barrack. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Yes, my lord. It is the court's expectation that you find the defendant not guilty of the charge which he stands accused. I presume there are no objections. None for me, my lord. Certainly not. This trial has really made me think, but this is the right decision. It's all been proven methodically and rigorously. I have no misgivings whatsoever. What's that? He's done easy? It's all over? I don't know what's become of the yard these days. I don't recognize the place. Very well. In that case, I hereby pronounce the defendant. We did it! Court is adjourned. We still didn't find out who the professor was or what happened 10 years ago, though. It's over. I wonder if we will ever. That was some trial. The Old Bailey, defendant's antechamber. Professor, what a splendid outcome, isn't it? Oh, it is, it is. Congratulations, Professor Hairbrayne. Mr. Naruhodo. Miss Susato. I am truly besides myself with gratitude. How can I ever thank you enough? I'm just glad it's all been cleared up, that you realize you were just caught up in a bad situation. Right now, you know, if I had that research grant money, I'd give it the whole lot to you, every penny. Well, that's very kind, but I'm just a student, so. We don't need any financial reward. Your acquittal is more than enough. Oh dear. Oh, what can I do? Aha. How about this as a memento, the paper about my hypothesis inside? Well, just as a memento then, thank you. I've been wondering, Professor, what are you going to do now? Oh my, yes. What am I going to do? My hypothesis and my great machine lie in ruins. But still, it's been too long since I was last in London, so perhaps I'll enjoy some sightseeing. I must explore the Great Exhibition while I'm here too, and see if new inspiration hits me. Oh yes, that's a wonderful idea. I can't allow that. What? Lord Van Zieks, what are you doing in here? Barrack. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Albert. Well, if I'm honest, it was terrifying. You were like a great demon behind your bench there, snarling down on your prey. You're one of the few true friends I have. I couldn't leave it to anybody else to handle the prosecution or the defense. Sorry? Or the defense? Did I just hear that right? I always knew that you had my best interest at heart, don't worry. How about you show me around while I'm here in town? It's been a long time since we left university. We have a lot to catch up on. Listen, Albert. In a few days, your acquittal will be made official. When that happens, you must head straight to Dover. I'll accompany you. What? From there, you'll cross the channel and make your way back to Germany. I've already purchased the tickets. But no, hold on a minute, Barrack. What about the Great Exhibition? This is the chance of a lifetime for me. I want to look around. No sightseeing, Albert. Give up on the idea. Why? Sometimes it's hard to see any warmth in those eyes, Barrack. Lord Van Zieks, is he worried that that killer is gonna get him? Because whoever Lord Van Zieks pronounces, whoever Lord Van Zieks is up against in the trial, the defendant, even if they're pronounced not guilty, they're dying in mysterious circumstances. Is that what he's worried about? That Hairbrayne is gonna get murdered? Lord Van Zieks. What's all this about? A necessary precaution. Yes, I think I understand. You do? Well, Iris told me that when you met Lord Van Zieks at his office some days ago, he asked how Mr. Natsume was doing. Yes, that's right. I remember being surprised at the time and thinking it was nice of him to ask. The point is, Mr. Natsume is still alive and well. Even though it's been more than 6 months now since he stood trial with the Reaper as the prosecutor. You mean the Reaper's influence doesn't stretch overseas. Those in the Reaper's sights meet their ends days or sometimes months after their acquittal. That's been the pattern up to now. But of course, we know that both Mr. Natsume and Gina were completely innocent. True. And perhaps that governs the Reaper's actions. The truly innocent are spared. But I don't want to take any chances with a close personal friend. But Barrack, like the mustache Nipponese, this man should leave the country without delay. That's why I'm packing him off to Germany at once. Right. Does your friend's shaped package get any say in it? Goodness, was this your intention all along then, Lord Van Zieks? In court, where people think of him as the Reaper, this man seems absolutely merciless. And yet, sometimes, I feel as though I don't understand him at all. It's time to go, Albert. Back to the prison for the time being. Ah yes, alright. Well then, Mr. Naruhodo. Thank you so much for everything. Not at all, Professor. It was a pleasure getting to know you. Best wishes, Professor Hairbrayne. Well, once the dust is settled, you must come and visit me in Germany. Anyway, goodbye for now. Now, my Nipponese friend. Oh, yes? I thought you'd gone too. We have matters to discuss. Can you spare me some time? You want to talk with me? I'll be waiting in the courtroom in 10 minutes. Wonder what that's about. Well, that was strange. For some reason, I didn't get that sense of impending doom as he walked away this time. The enigma, Barrack Van Zieks. What does he want to discuss, I wonder? The answer awaits in the courtroom, I suppose. Here goes, then. What is this about? October, 4:58 p.m. The Old Bailey. Courtroom. So, are you satisfied? You saved a guileless scientist from a great injustice. Probably pronounced that wrong. Yes, I think so. I'm relieved, at least, that the man's innocence could be proven. Anyway, I imagine you've been wondering where my anonymity towards you Nipponese comes from. Well, at first I thought you just didn't like me. I imagine you saw me as a pretentious child from an unimportant land who had no business being here. But now, I think differently. You clearly know our ways. So I would guess that some specific incident led to your thorough dislike of my race. Will you tell me what happened, please? The professor. I thought I'd never hear that name in this courtroom again, to be honest. He took your brother's life. Clint. My brother was Clint Van Zieks. 16 years ago now, when I was still just in my teens, he was already the director of prosecutions and a key member of the judiciary. I looked up to him. He was everything I aspired to be. He was involved in the establishment of justice systems in foreign countries as well. There were exchange programs between Britain and other nations to share knowledge and ideas. As part of one of those programs, 3 judicial students came to Britain from your homeland, the Empire of Japan. Oh. If it was 16 years ago, then, one of them could have been my father. Of course. I remember Dr. Mikotobo well. I had no idea. I was a minor at the time, training at the prosecutor's office. One day, Clint introduced me to the 3 visiting Nipponese. So, you've actually met my father. He and his colleagues were polite and amicable. They were adept at their work and exacting in their standards. It was my first encounter with the Nipponese spirit, and it made a very great impression upon me. But 6 years later, that's when it happened. The murder. The investigation was going nowhere. There were no suspects even, just an ever-growing list of victims. And in the end, my brother became one of them. The last, in fact, before the case was finally resolved. I'm so sorry, Lord Van Zieks. Truly. Clint was always ready to put his life on the line for justice anyway. So he wouldn't have wanted it any other way. He lost his life to the killer, but it was his victory in the end. For me personally, though, it was a great loss. I found myself in a very dark place indeed. When I finally found out the killer's identity, the reason why no one had been able to catch the man sooner ceased to be such a mystery. He'd been hiding in plain sight all the time. In plain sight? One of the students? Are you aware of political events 10 years ago? It was a period of extremely sensitive diplomacy between the British and Japanese empires. A new treaty was being forged, I think. Correct. The Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation was being concluded. The leaders of both countries were deep in extensive political discussions. Which is why this particular killer's appearance in court was conducted as a closed trial. If the British public had known the identity of the killer, not only would the treaty have been in jeopardy, but our 2 nations could have very well have ended up at war. What? Well, he just said what I said, a war between Britain and Japan. But that would mean... Oh my. You mean to say that the professor was...
When the trial reached its conclusion earlier, I thought to myself, yes, it's time. Time for you to come face to face with this hideous monster. I borrowed the key for the mask from the proprietress of the Waxwork Museum. So see for yourselves now. Confirm it with your own eyes. The truth that's been hidden this past decade.
That's the professor?
Yes, that's him.
Until now, the thought never even crossed my mind. That the mass murderer, whose crimes shook Britain as never before, was Japanese.
Wait a minute. That face. I feel as though I've seen it somewhere. It's strangely familiar.
Where? What's going on right now? Is that Kazuma?
Father. What? Father?
What? What?
Kazuma! My best friend.
So he was alive?
After a whole
So I was right in my predictions that was actually Kazuma.
as he stood there before me. Ryunosuke.
So he's been alive. His amnesia's gone because of that?
My friend.
Kazuma-sama!
Judicial Assistant Mikotoba.
It's been a very long road. Thank you. Thank you for guiding my friend here when I could not.
It was an honor.
I knew you wouldn't die that easily. Kazuma.
I owe you thanks, too. For taking good care of that in my absence.
Oh. Karuma, the great blade of the Asogi clan, passed down through the generations. When we left Japan, this sword was at my friend's side. The Japanese man's katana is his soul, and he couldn't be parted from it. But then,
How
the
did he...
incident happened. It was Susato-san's wish that I inherit the sword, and I've kept it with me ever since, along with my memories of the friendship we shared.
But how did he survive?
With this by myself.
Mr. Sholmes lied.
I always felt that you were watching over me somehow.
So Kazuma's father was the serial killer?
I've made it. At last.
Father. Are you saying... Surely not. You mean... you knew all this time? I'm looking at it. But... I still can't believe it. This mass murderer is Kazuma's father.
Oh my god.
Kazuma-sama.
Ryunosuke, we have much to talk about, but now is not the time. I'll be seeing you.
Where was Barrick Van Zieks during that? He didn't even say anything.
That's all Kazuma said. Before he turned and left us there, in the courtroom.
So he's the living afterimage of the man who took my brother's life, is he? Yes, Kazuma Asoji, my best friend. 3 months ago, when Lord Strongheart introduced us, I had an inkling there was something there, some connection. But why did Lord Strongheart do that? Why did he make Kazuma Lord Van Zieks' apprentice, and when he was suffering amnesia too? The man was apprehended, even executed. But his legacy just won't die. That's the sad truth. Anyway, that's all I had to say. I thank you for meeting with me as I asked. Damn, I think that was surely a twist. 10 years ago, I thought that it could have been Mr. Asman or Barrick's brother, but I never imagined that Kazuma's dad could be the serial killer. That was definitely a twist. 10 years ago, my grandmother took me to the railway station. We were there to meet my father from the train. For me, it was the first time I'd ever seen him. Poor Susato-san, all this is tied up with painful memories for her too. She's never talked about this with me before, though. It took time to adjust to having father around, but just when I was starting to get used to it, he called me into his study one day. He told me that a great friend of his had passed away in London, and that the friend had left behind a son, a boy 7 years, my senior. Father told me the boy had made a promise to his late father, so he was studying to become a defense lawyer. I wanted to help, so I studied to become a qualified judicial assistant. As I'm sure you've worked out, that young man's name was Kazuma Asoji. So you see, that's how he and I met.
For a brief moment, my great friend had returned, only to disappear again all too soon. But in that fleeting encounter, something stirred. Something that had been dormant for a long time. As if great wheels had been set in motion. I could almost hear them creaking into life. In some ways, it was the end of a chapter, but in many, it was the start of a new one.
So I guess it ends there. There's still 2 cases left in this game. Definitely gonna play them for you guys. I am enjoying this game. This game, like I said, is my favorite game of 2021. But oh man, that twist right there, that's just the story is well written. Like the story is well written, even though there's not much there's not much actual dialogue. You're reading everything, it's text. The story is definitely well written. That was a twist I was not expecting there. I was not expecting the serial killer to be Kazuma's dad. That was just oh man, that was a big twist, but I guess they're going to explain how Kazuma survived in the next part. So thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you do enjoy this series, please do drop a like. Sorry about this part being kind of long, but I wanted to have that whole thing in there before the case ended. This was definitely I think this was the craziest case so far. I think this was even crazier than the McGilded case. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone.